Okay, this is Karen Arab. I'm in Urbana, Champaign, about to head downtown to the Champaign City Building, where the program, or the Party for Socialism and Liberation, is holding their rally opposing Trump. It's called Unite Against Trump, Shut Down Racism, War and Bigotry. Yeah, today's January 20th at 1 o'clock. So they also have many, the Socialist Alternative, the ISO, the Undergrad, Graduate Alliance, the Prairie Green Party, and many supporters. Many supporters or sponsors, and many locals will be there. So it's a great day given the temperature. It is absolutely freezing out. Yeah, if anyone does not wish to be recorded, let me know. I'm going to be editing as well as filming.
Okay.
Wait, keep moving, baby. Keep moving.
I wasn't staying, but I don't know what to say. My point was
Thank you.
as a student in
Oh, neat to meet you on that.
Jesse, would you like to say a few words about why you're here today?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay, got it. Since my interviews didn't work out. Hi. Hi, would anyone like to say a few words about why you're here today?
Because we're sick of the 2 years of Trump. Time to dump him.
That's a little one.
Okay. Marcy, would you like to say a few words about what brought you out here today on this fine, cold morning, afternoon, whatever?
Well, I'll tell you what. There are many things that are bringing me out. The fact that our president is a liar and a cheat, and the fact that he doesn't care about people at all. The fact that there is a shutdown going on just because of his ego, because he refuses to do anything else other than fund a wall that is not going to do anything. So that's why I'm here.
Good reason. Anyone else like to say a few words?
Sure. What's on my mind today is the fact that he's opening up the wilderness in Alaska for drilling. That's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking.
One of the many. I can't really. I try to be a positive person and
Pretty hard.
something good, and I can't.
Welcome to the club. Would you like to say a few words about why you're out here today? I know your sign has a lot to say.
Sick of the system and sick of Trump. It's going to be Karen and then
Okay.
having like cognitive, well, of
Elias is
course,
going to start it all out. Yeah.
he's having some cognitive issues.
Colin, would you like to say a few words about what brings you out here on this nice, cold day?
Well, we're here to challenge Trump as president and the entire fascist, racist, capitalist system that produced it.
To start towards that kind of organization that will replace the hate and the bigotry that Trump and his administration is and represents and uses. We want a government that is of the majority and not just of the minority, of the oppressed, not the oppressors, a government that lives what it legislates, and a government that is dedicated to improving the lives of all of its citizens. It is not a government that shuts down. It is not a government that has unelected arbiters of justice that have shown us time and time and again that they will side with the oppressors over the oppressed. And it is not a government that has been woven with the fibers of massacred Native Americans and brick and mortared by black women and men. A people's government gives oppressed nations that exist within our borders and without our borders the right to self-determination, which means an end to wars of imperialist aggression in places like Yemen, and an end to racist law enforcement within our own country. There's a saying that is on some of our flyers, and that has been passed around the internet a lot, that Trump is the symptom, capitalism is the disease, revolution the cure. And we all are here because Trump's actions have reached into all of our lives and have made inaction unconscionable. Today we're going to start to stand up, fight back, show that we know what they're doing and that we don't like it. We're going to stand up with all of our dignity and fight back with the power of the people. Woo. Yeah. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out. We're going to walk to the Champaign Public Library. Our friend Peter over here has his hand up.
So I'm Francesca. I'm with United Students for Labor Rights. So kind of like what he said, for 2 years now, a guy named Donald Trump has been attempting to run this country, but I'm not going to dignify him with the title of president because he's definitely not my president and he never will be. So there are countless issues that are going on today that we're protesting, and each and every one deserves to be addressed today and heard. It is honestly such a joke what is going on in Washington, D.C., and while the government itself is an institution full of corruption and dysfunction, underneath are middle and lower class workers who are putting in their labor to do the work for this institution, whether they like it or not. And Trump and his administration want to build a wall that honestly nobody fucking wants. And a wall that, since he has declared his presidential campaign, has symbolized the shameless, bigoted, xenophobic, and racist attitudes that do exist in this country. And at the same time, Trump has often praised his own efforts in the rise of jobs, and government workers have not had jobs or paying care of themselves and their families. Because even when this shutdown ends, the problems are going to linger, and we have to continue to fight this right-wing nonsense and giving a voice and platform to the people in this country who are giving their all to do the same. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike from Socialist Alternative. Trump and his administration are racist, forcing a shutdown and funding a wall that is meant to divide and whip up racist hysteria. Trump and his administration are sexist. The predator-in-chief's history of harassment towards women sparked millions to march against misogyny and patriarchy, and it only continues with the support for rapist Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. Trump and his administration are against working people, with his heinous tax cuts for the rich and not paying federal workers during the shutdown. But it's not just Trump. It's both parties and the system of capitalism that they represent. In the last shutdown over DACA funding, Democrats offered Trump $25 billion for a wall in exchange for funding for Dreamers, which they eventually caved on anyways. Just this weekend, Democrats leaders have added $1 billion to the budget for, quote, border-related spending, in order to end the shutdown. They are not the resistance. This, here today, is how we end the shutdown and stop the wall. Not through backroom deals and press conferences, through direct action. If the TSA agents and other workers went on strike, and a coordinated strike, the shutdown for donations and accountable to working people. Such a party of working people, by working people, for working people, rooted in movements and movement building as a source of power, would make Medicare for all, free tuition, a green economy, and other progressive demands a reality. And alongside a fighting labor movement, could sharply pose the question of power for the working class. The environmental crisis we are faced with, created by capitalism, only the top 100 companies are responsible for 70% of pollution, demonstrates the inability of capitalism to save us. We can reverse climate disaster by taking the energy industry into public ownership and taxing the rich to sponsor a massive green economy. With the UN climate report giving us only 12 years to reverse its damaging effects before it's too late, it's not socialism or barbarism, it's socialism or extinction. Now is the time to organize. Thank you.
The world recognizes that the U.S. government is what Martin Luther King called it long ago, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. The wars the U.S. is waging in 8 countries and its war provocations against Russia and China risk a wider, even nuclear war. Although most Americans are not aware of it, the U.S. government is today making war-killing people in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. They're doing so principally to control the flow of oil out of the Mideast and North Africa, which the U.S. uses as a weapon against its economic rivals from Germany and to China. The ongoing drone assassination program, called the most extreme terrorist campaign of modern times, has killed thousands of people, most of them not the presumed remnants that the U.S. inherited at the end of World War II. Our sanctions, which are war, killing and crippling as they do, and our interventions are responsible for creating chaos, a crime resulting in poverty and death from which so many victims or immigrants seek asylum. Our European allies and proxies, whether the Saudis or Israel, would not be able to commit the crimes they do without U.S. support. It is unfortunately the basis of U.S. foreign policy to use war and the threats of war to retard economic development of Russia and China as competitors to American control of the world economy, from U.S. support for a fascist coup in Ukraine to U.S. naval provocations in the South China Sea and huge NATO military exercises in Eastern Europe. So it's time we take action and change our system of for-profit, which is capitalism, and join the working class people in a worldwide effort to halt these continuing wars of imperialism and hegemony.
USA! No Trump! No KKK! No fascist USA! No Trump! No KKK! No racist USA! No Trump! No KKK! No racist USA! No Trump! No KKK! No racist USA! Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids did you kill today? Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids have you killed today? Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids have you killed today? Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids have you killed today? Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids have you killed today? Hey, hey, Donald J! How many kids have you killed today? Let me hear it, folks!
Of anarchists who share common visions of a new world. A world where power and participation flow from the bottom upwards. And society is organized for people's aspirations, passions, and needs, rather than conflict, white supremacy and racial domination, patriarchy or imperialism.
Hello everyone, my name is Joe or Jocelyn. First of all, so it may not come as a surprise to many people here that me as an individual and in Black Rose, we don't completely agree with every single organization here. Co-sponsoring event are present. We can all go over the intricacies of racist, classist, homophobic, transphobic, alias system of oppression that exists, that we know about. But at the end of the day, we're here for a reason. We agree to a certain extent, enough to be out here in the cold and the snow, because we know that this is important. I know people talk about putting our differences aside, but it's not just about putting our differences aside, it's about putting our similarities together. We can let our political and ideological disagreements be known and have those uncomfortable conversations. Because I'll tell you a little secret, none of us individually know how to go about building the world that we want. We need each other. We might even learn a thing or two in the process. We just need to agree on one starting point. And for me, I hope that starting point is that Trump is just the symptom of a system that shows us who and what they really value. And I'll tell you right now, it's none of us right here in one way or the other, and some of us in multiple ways. Whether you're in the struggle for yourself and your loved ones, or you see your struggle irrevocably intertwined with everyone else's, or both, whether this is your first time out here or you've never missed a march, I hope you talk to someone today that you haven't talked to before, and feel free to find me afterwards. We have a lot of work to do, and we can't do it alone.
Okay.
On that note, there's a quote from the Black Republication that I like to share. It's called "Popular Power in a Time of Reaction, a Strategy for Social Struggle," and I'm going to read it in Spanish, and if I'm going to translate English. So. La ira popular está en un nivel históricamente alto, pero se están generando muy pocos movimientos. La izquierda institucional no está interesada en construir poder fuera de los canales estrechamente controlados. Debemos construir un poder de movimiento social autónomo, independiente de la izquierda institucional en nuestros lugares de trabajo, escuelas y comunidades. Con este fin debemos adoptar estrategias en sectores específicos, como indicadores de actividad de movimiento social. De la misma forma que las organizaciones socialistas abogan por la necesidad de construir un partido político independiente, debemos defender la idea de construir movimientos sociales
No problem.
independientes.
You want me to go talk to them? No?
We'll see if they come over.
Okay, no problem. I can handle it.
Popular anger is at an all-time high, but there is very little movement being generated. The institutional left is not interested in building power outside of tightly controlled channels. We need to build autonomous social movement power, independent of the institutional left in our workplaces, schools, and communities. We need to adopt strategies in specific sectors as guideposts for social movement activity. In the same way that socialist organizations argue for a need to build an independent political party, we should make our argument for building independent social movements.
I can handle them.
Okay.
I don't broadcast that.
Funding for yet another border wall. We already have border walls, thanks to former presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. These walls already force people to cross dangerous terrains, and thousands of people have died trying to enter this country around those walls. The relationship is clear. More border walls result in more deaths. We must say no to both. We must roll back the decades of deadly border policy, and we must have a just and dignified system for entering this country.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the government shutdown is not only about creating a more deadly border. Each addition to the border wall further criminalizes the undocumented people already in this country. Their legal limbo creates a power dynamic that is exploited here and across the country in the form of domestic abuse, wage theft, and sexual assault. The criminalization of undocumented status in this country is a harm unto itself, and it must be stopped. With regard to wage theft, personally, I include any undocumented worker and migrant worker that is paid below the state minimum wage. For those who say that we don't have enough money to pay undocumented and migrant workers an equality wage, I say that our planet can't afford $2.1 billion in oil subsidies anymore, and that subsidy money should be put to better use. That's more than enough money to give every undocumented worker and migrant worker an equality wage. That's right. And if we have $5.7 billion to spend, instead of a border wall, we should use that money to create a just system for entry. We have to continue to organize, build movements, and put pressure on those in power. To end this shutdown and more, thank you all for braving the cold today in solidarity against this unprecedented abuse of power. Meet me afterwards for signing petitions against the border wall and against the discriminatory ordinance that is gentrifying the city of Champaign.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you all for coming out today on this very cold 2-year anniversary of Donald Trump's inauguration. I'd like to thank all the co-sponsoring organizations for all the help they've had with planning this march, as well as the powerful words they've spoken today.
Yes.
Over the past 2 years, Trump has lived up to his racist campaign promises in many ways. From the Muslim travel ban, the terrorization of the people of Yemen, rolling back protections for LGBTQ people, continued detention and separation of immigrant families, privatization of indigenous land, and normalizing and apologizing for far-right extremist groups in America. There are too many transgressions to name all here today. I just mentioned the Muslim travel ban of 2017. I want to focus on what it was that defeated the first incarnation of this executive order. People flooded airports in large numbers, demanding the end of this egregiously anti-Muslim and racist ban. In the face of this resistance, Trump backed down and amended the executive order. This is an example of what real resistance is. Mass movements of people showing their strength and forcing oppressors to back down. Every meaningful step towards liberation has been based on this strategy of mass movements. Let's even take the Civil War and the abolishment of slavery. Frederick Douglass said the Civil War originated with the South fighting to take slavery out of the Union, but the power lies in the hands of people. Without the people, there can be no movement for revolutionary change. Behind even the most influential and important activist leaders, there is always a mass movement of ordinary people to give them strength. The Montgomery bus boycott, where Martin Luther King Jr. made his mark on the political landscape, was organized by the Women's Political Council and other working class activists behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Without average working people laying the groundwork of a mass movement, there would have been no chance for success. The same lessons can be drawn from the struggles for women's liberation, LGBTQ liberation, indigenous liberation, labor rights struggles, and countless other struggles in this country and around the world. We must build a mass movement, and not one that is based on simply waiting for the Democratic Party to save us.
Yeah.
Focusing on bipartisan politics stops us from getting to the root of the issue. Trump is the symptom of capitalism in America. Capitalism is a social order that was constructed in order to protect the right to property and land stolen from indigenous Americans and built using the unpaid labor of kidnapped people. A social order that determines what is to be produced based on the profit of the 1%, not the needs of the people. A social order that allows millions of people to remain homeless while simultaneously having millions of empty houses sitting idle. Because it's not profitable to house people. It's a social order that prioritizes military expenditures over funding for education, food, job security, and reparations owed to oppressed peoples. It's a social order that does not hesitate to bomb people overseas into submission and imprison and deport refugees fleeing conditions that U.S. imperialism had a hand in creating. And these have been characteristics of capitalism and imperialism since its inception. U.S. imperialism and capitalism was in full force under the Obama, Bush, and Clinton administration. A recent United Nations report says we have only 12 years to make deep changes in how humanity produces and consumes energy. If we don't, we face climate catastrophe, which will only exacerbate the issues of war, racism, exploitation, and right-wing extremism. We have a 12-year deadline for socialism. So, let's build a mass movement to achieve that. We must continue to struggle against this administration and block every reactionary and racist policy it attempts to enact. But leave the legal maneuvering, Russiagate hysteria, and hopes for impeachment to the politicians. By examining history, we know that mass movements will always be more effective and powerful than these. But we also can't afford to stop the movement when Trump is voted out or impeached or whatever. All the contradictions and injustices of capitalism and imperialism will remain. I know that we can do this. We can build a movement that speaks for the working class and oppressed people, not Wall Street and the Pentagon. And everyone has a place in this movement, no matter your strengths or weaknesses or your level of ability. There is room for you in the struggle. Let's meet this 12-year deadline. Let's start today. All power to the people.